Hey, Dave from the Centurion's Review. I have an interesting game here. It's Paper Wars issue number 79, Thunderbirds at War. Tell you a little story about how I came about this. I read Paper Wars on occasion back in the day, and back then it did not have a game, so I haven't read the magazine in years, and someone went on the Facebook Solitaire Wargame group and posted a picture of the map and explained that it was a solitaire game. I took one look at the map and I said, this looks like something I would like to play, so I immediately jumped on eBay and I picked up a copy of the game for like, I don't know, $20 plus $9 shipping or something. I think I bought it from Noble Knights Games. He had two of them for sale. Someone else bought the other one. Then there's a few people complaining on the group that they couldn't get a copy, but I'm sure someone else will end up putting this up for sale again, so I wouldn't worry too much if you missed out. I'm sure enough of these were manufactured, but what this game is about, it's about the Royal Canadian Air Force 6th Group. They flew Wimpy bombers in, when was it, 1943 to May 1945. They bombed Europe, basically they bombed Germany itself and then some targets in France too. And so the goal of this game is you want to take your Wimpy bomber and successfully complete 30 missions. Successfully completed doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means. If you're bombing targets in France, you got to successfully hit the target. But if you're over Germany proper itself, even if your aimer does not spot the target and you end up just dropping the bombs in the middle of nowhere, that's considered a success because your bombs hit Germany. So if you hit the side of a mountain with nothing growing on it but trees, but it's inside Germany, that's considered a success. So I guess they're just trying to be historically accurate about that because that's what they considered a success back then. But the way this game is played, basically you do the initial setup, and the setup you roll for weather conditions, so you roll to see if it's cloudy, and then you roll for the phase of the moon. If it's heavy clouds, I think you get a -1 die roll modifier to the general results table. If it's clear, you get a +1. And as far as phases of the moon, if you have a crescent moon, then I believe you get a -1 modifier, and if it's a full moon, since there's lots of light, you get a +1. On the flip side, though, that means the German Luftwaffe and so forth also gets those same die roll modifiers. So if the weather's helping you, it's helping the Luftwaffe too. So something to think about. Also, you'll set up your airframe points and your airframe chits. I call them airframe points. Whenever you take damage, you'll flip one over, and it could show that you either just lost the equivalent of 1 whole point, I would call it. That's not what they call it. Or you've taken some critical damage, and once you've lost all your whole points, the plane is destroyed unless something else destroys it first. What else is there? You get crew quality points. You get those by completing missions. Each time you complete a mission, I think it's 3 crew quality points you get. You can spend them to give like your gunner a one-time +1 when rolling and so forth, or some of the other crew like the navigator can get a +1. There's also, I think they're called pilot discretionary points or something like that. Your pilot gets 3 of them. One of them will that he chooses can allow him to re-roll. He's got another one that'll help with maneuvering. Maneuvering is used if you're being attacked by an enemy aircraft and it hits you. You can do a maneuver at the last second to try to avoid taking damage. What else is there in setup? In setup, you also choose the crew members. There's 6 crew slots, but you're only allowed to have 5, so you're always missing 1 crew member. Some of the crew members in a pinch can take the job of another crew member, so you set up the crew depending on the mission you're going to get. There's a whole list of missions in the order they came in historically. I've just been playing them in the order they came historically. And then when your bomb target is determined, they'll determine the bombing track you use. We'll go over that when I show you an example of the game in play. But the game is very simple to learn. It only takes about 5 minutes to play a game or so. The rule book while the game's simple, it could have been written a little better. It felt like the game was rushed, but we'll go over what I think of the game and stuff after we play an example mission. So let's go to the example mission now. We're going to do the setup for Thunderbirds at War. I'm not doing it in the order the book has because it doesn't matter what order you do the setup in. I'm doing it in the order that makes sense to me. So we're starting with 3 crew quality points because on the first mission we had earned 3 crew quality points. We're just going to do, I've actually done about 10 missions for this, but I'm pretending we're doing the second mission. So we got 3 of those from the first mission. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out Luftwaffe intensity. There's 3 chits. Last game it was high, so you remove that chit and you just randomly grab one of these 2. So it's going to be medium, so you just put that in the active event box. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the crew. First thing I'm going to choose is a pilot because it's nice to have someone who can actually fly the aircraft. And then we're going to have a radio man, a navigator, a flight engineer, and a gunner. You're only allowed to have 5 total, so you're always missing 1 guy, but some of these guys can perform 2 people's jobs. So let's see here. Next thing we're going to do is missions completed. We'll start 1, and we're going to roll to see what the sky is like. So I rolled a 7, so that's heavy clouds. And we're going to see what phase the moon is. The moon 1, so it's a full moon, so there's plenty of light at night. The cloudy gives a -1 die roll modifier to everything on the general results table, and full moon gives a +1 because it allows you to see easier. As you can see down here, Lorient, that's green as far as the anti-aircraft, so we will start the bomb here. And then we're going to spend our 3 crew quality points here. We're going to give the gunner a +1. That's a one-time use. Navigator will get +1. And the flight engineer will get repair of +1. That's a misprint. It should have a +1, not just a 1 there. And then the pilot gets some points for himself that he's going to use. The first one's going to give a pilot reroll. Next one's a pilot discretionary point. If I recall correctly, that just allows him to give a point to one of the other guys or to use it pretty much however he wishes. And here's one to adds +1 to maneuver. And we're going to give fill the airframe track. These get flipped over whenever you get damaged, and on the back, bad things can happen when these get flipped over. Sometimes nothing happens, but oops. Alright, and altitude, we always start at high altitude, so we put the high altitude marker there. And now we got to lay out our flight path. I'm going to go from here, from the airport, down to here to Lorient and back. So I have to put in the flight path markers. Each of these flight path markers on the back, there's either no event or there's an event. So these get flipped while you're playing. This is a very simple game, so the setup takes as long as the actual game itself. The game doesn't take but 5 or maybe 10 minutes, if even that long. So I'm just putting the arrow in the direction I'm flying. And so when we get to Lorient, we're going to fly back on the same path, so I'll put that one there. And let me get some more flight path markers here out of the cup. And actually that one shouldn't be there. There should be one just for coming back. So let me count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that means that I start with 10 fuel. So on the fuel part here, I just put the fuel needle pointing to the 10. And that's the basic setup for the game. We're going to go on to the game itself now. Alright, for the game itself now, we start in our cute little airplane here and we fly to the first position. So we take the flight path marker off the bottom and put our plane there. And we remove our fuel from 10 to 9. And let's see what this flight path has to say. No event, so nothing happened. That's good. Alright, so now he flies to the next space. Oops. Sorry, this is hard to do while being scrunched behind a camera. Alright, so we move that to 8. That's our fuel. Our fuel is at 8. And put him there. And flight path. This time there's an event. So one thing weird about this game is I wish instead of saying event it had the actual event number, because now what I do is I draw from a cup the events to get the event number. So instead of saying event, that should just say event 9 or event 6. So let's look in the book to see what event 6 is. Alright, event 6 were target bound, so this is unique. Oboe triangulation works like a charm. When entering the target, a hex, roll on the GRT with a +2 die roll modifier to find the target. Discard unique event chits drawn later. Keep this chit until homebound. Okay. So to remind us about that event, we'll put this in the active event box. And now Mr. Airplane flies to the next hex. And it's the bottom one we're looking for. So before we do anything, let's move it down to fuel to 7. No event. Alright, so the airplane flies to a new hex now. And let's look at get the bottom chit out there and move the fuel down to 6. No event. We're getting very lucky. Alright, so now he is flying to the the shaded area here is basically an enemy hex. So the first thing we do when we get there, before we do anything, is flip over for the event. There's no event. We're at high altitude. We're going to go to low altitude later, but at high altitude, Luftwaffe intensity is medium, so we have to roll on the medium table to see how many airplanes there are. We roll a 5, so there's going to be 2 enemy aircraft. Alright, the enemy aircraft have to roll to spot your plane, but there's 2 die roll modifiers. Since it's cloudy, there's a -1, but it's full moon, so there's a +1. They cancel out, so there's no die roll modifier. So we'll roll on the table. We got 2 planes, so twice. First time a 5 does not spot the aircraft. Second time a 5 does not spot the aircraft, so we got very lucky and the Luftwaffe was useless. Okay, so now that we're past the enemy fighters, we dropped a low altitude according to the bombing track here. So let's drop to low. And in here we have zone flak. So it's green, as you see, it's green flak there. So we go to the zone flak table here and roll. And we roll a 5, so there's 1 flak. Alright, so let's roll the flak. It's the usual story. The modifiers cancel each other out for the clouds and full. So zone gets a 0. Zeros are not 10 in this, so zone flak does not get the aircraft. Alright, now we move to target flak. That's 1 dice. So it rolled an 8, so that does hit the aircraft. Correction, doesn't hit the aircraft, it spots the aircraft. But the pilot, I'm going to use his one-time pilot reroll to make the enemy reroll the flak. And they roll a 2, so it does not spot the aircraft. So they've been very lucky. Alright, we're going to attempt to bomb the target now. We get a +2 because of event 6, so let's roll that. We get a 5, becomes a 7, so 7 success. So actually that means actually spotted. So it's spotted, so go to bombs away, and bombs automatically hit since it's spotted and we're successful. And the last part of the bombing track is return to high altitude. So now that we're at high altitude, if we run into any events with fighters, they can attack us. So we're going to move to the next space and go down to 5 fuel, and let's see if there's an event there. No event. Move to the next space, go down to 4 fuel. See if that's an event. Yes, it is an event. Let's see what it is. The event is 4. Let me look that up in the book real quick. I wish they had a removable chart with the events. So we're going homebound now, and the rear gunner spots a night fighter which does not appear to have seen you. On a D10 die roll of 6 to 9, it spots you and combat starts. Otherwise, no event. 9, so it does spot us, so combat is going to begin. So my gunner has a +1, and he's going to try and take out that fighter. 2 becomes 3. So he does not see the... So now, since the fighter hasn't been spotted, it's going to try and damage the Wimpy. And he rolls a 3, and with modifiers it's still a 3, so it does not damage the Wimpy, so that's good. So he gets to continue on. Let's put this discarded in the discarded chit pile, and let's move to this space and lose a fuel, so we're down to 3 fuel. And flip it over, and it's another event. Let's see what event we have. Event 5, let's look that up. We're in the homebound phase. Period of calm. A few minutes breather between crises and a cup of tea from the thermos. Invigorate the crew. Restore bonus to 1 unwounded crew member. Well, I guess the gunner gets this thing back. I used it before. I forgot to remove it. So the gunner's got his +1 back. So that wasn't a bad event. And we're going to move to this space and lose a fuel. So now we're down to 2 fuel. Let's see if there's an event here. Yes, there's an event. I drew very poorly. Oh, this was supposed to go to discarded chits. Event number 9. Let's look that up. Number 9, homebound advanced training. The wing commander sends a coded radio message to the effect that you are to proceed immediately to group headquarters, and upon landing your crew will be sent for advanced training. Skip the next mission. Interesting. So that's kind of cool. So we'll remove that event marker, and now we move to the airfield and flip that to see if there's an event. Oh, of course there's an event. Let's see what it is. Hopefully it isn't a crash and burn event or something. Event number 12. Let's see what that is. German tactical advantage. All Luftwaffe fighter attacks get +1 die roll modifier for all die rolls on the GRT for remaining of the homebound flight. Discarding a tactical advantage event chit drawn earlier. Keep this chit until instructed otherwise. Well, that's no big deal because there's no Luftwaffe around right now. So he just lands and the mission is a complete success. So you get 3 crew quality points that you can spend the next mission. So, see what I mean? It's a very simple game, and it only takes but 5 minutes to play. So, I'll go over what I thought of the game next. So, what do I think of Thunderbirds at War? Well, it's alright. It's a very simple game. The best thing about the game is you can take someone who's never played a war game before and they could actually learn the game, even though the rule book is a little bit confusing at times. And when I played the game, I did a few things in a different order than the rule book said to do them because it just made more sense. So that actually might bother a newer player, but it didn't really bother me. But the game's really simple. There's not much strategy. I mean, you basically create a flight path to the target and the flight path back, and there's just random events occurring each time you enter a chit. So, if you like high strategy, this isn't the game for you. This is just a simple game. I mean, it's kind of like things were in real life when these bombers went to bomb. They just picked their path to and from the target. There wasn't much strategy. There was a lot of luck involved whether your bomber survived the mission or not. So, yeah, I think it's good for new players, the game. Seasoned veterans will probably get bored of the game really quick because of the lack of strategy. I mean, I've played 10 missions and I'm already kind of bored of the game just because, I mean, I just pick the path to and from target and I'm flipping counters to see what random events happen, and through no strategy or intelligence of my own do I determine whether I live or die. It's just determined by what events are drawn. So, yeah, that's basically all I got to say about it. It's decent for beginners, but seasoned veterans are going to find that there's not enough in the game to keep them interested. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel.